2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Full Course Yellow in Pit Lane's weekly get-together, where we talk all things motorsport and anything else that happens to pop into our little minds. Joining us on the program tonight, we're going to be, we've got a packed panel again with Peter Johnson, our in Pit Lane floor manager and resident Formula One tragic. We have Chris Ritchie joining us once again. Good to see you, Chris, back. Mark Jones all the way from Queensland, and no doubt giving us some updates on the... with an eye on the state of origin, and also Richard Outram joining us as well. How are you all? Mark, is there a score that we can get from you for those people who are interested?
14-6, 2 tries to 1, and New South Wales are playing with 12 men, 1 sent off already.
Well, there you go. So if anything major happens, we shall let you know. We know we don't have a huge audience outside of Melbourne anyway, but we know tonight nobody's watching from either New South Wales or Queensland. That's for sure.
Well, that's true enough.
It's a very very big thing, and it's very very popular up there. So then I think the second match is being played down here, isn't it? At the MCG.
That sounds about right. They every other year there tends to be a game in Melbourne.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the last one. I mean, you couldn't move. As I said to a few barman friends, I actually have a few barman friends. You'd be surprised to know. And they said that and they said it was chaos. They just said, look, they said, look, they said basically Tuesday, everywhere you went. I mean, even going into the show, there was just on the trains, and this was on the Tuesday, and then on Wednesday it was just I had to go in for some reason on Wednesday on the day of the match, and it was just a sea of blue and maroon. It was just everywhere. All these people from looking, taking photos of all the graffiti and all the shit that we go. God, that looks horrible. It's like, it's so arty. It's so it's so Melbourne, so pretentious.
It's probably easy to get a ticket. From me here in Queensland, it's probably easier for me to get a ticket to the Melbourne game than the game at Lang Park.
Well, I imagine so. Well, I think that's one of the reasons why that
that's not the reason
popular. Why. There's a lot of because there's so many people come down here for it. I mean, the hotels were full last time, so it's become a huge success. But anyway, speaking of huge success, the huge success of Sergio Perez's career is continuing. Pete, what are you? Were you surprised?
Not really. I don't think so. He's doing better this year than he did last year. So, So.
How much do you think Max Verstappen has played in this? I mean, Max has been very open to the fact that he's very comfortable with Sergio as his number 2. He may not have been as comfortable alongside of someone like Carlos Sainz or someone. So how much do you think that has sort of come into the play for it, that he's got
probably quite a lot, and given that there's been ructions around, if there's the supposed factions with Helmut Marko on one side and Christian Horner on the other, and there's been that, and Joss throwing in his two bobs worth. I'm not sure what the currency in Dutch is, but
it used to be krona, but I think it's now euro.
Well, I'm pretty sure the euros now.
Yeah, it's the euro.
Over everything.
Yeah.
So I think there would have been quite a lot from the Verstappen camp, a lot of influence. Yeah.
Yeah, he's also very, very popular. I mean, I saw an article somewhere that's saying that his popularity in Mexico in particular had a lot to do with the marketing people at Red Bull were saying that South America is one of their biggest markets, and he's very, very popular over there, and he's a known commodity. I mean, they know what they're going to get out of him. They know what the relationship is between him and Max, and at the moment, even though there's still lots of rumours about Max being on the move, he's certainly there for the moment, and not going anywhere. So. Yeah,
Sergio's a bit more willing to do the press stuff that Max is unwilling to do. So there's he has utility outside of the car.
Well, that's one of the things that Daniel used to do. I mean, it was Daniel was the public face of. I mean, because we did a couple of things down here with Red Bull. Like I think we did about 3 things while Daniel was with them, and it was like Max would turn up, but Max basically wouldn't say, and he'd come there and he'd do the minimum, and then the moment he had the opportunity, they'd turn around and say, "Oh, where's Max? Has gone back to the hotel." But Daniel would be doing the "Hi everyone," and he'd be doing all the media stuff, and he was obviously very popular. So I would imagine that counts for something, because Max clearly doesn't like doing media, and he's not very good at it. He seems to be, fairly humorless, and certainly the times that we sort of tried to talk to him, he was like, no, yes, no, whatever, and he moved on, and you couldn't get much out of him.
Well, there's kind of a history in Formula One of this sort of behaviour, where you have your world champion and your offsider who apologises for the world champion.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good. I mean, and there's a lot to be said for being a dutiful number 2. I mean, sort of, Barrichello and Eddie Jordan and a whole bunch of, over the years, did very well for themselves by playing the diligent number 2, and they made very
Eddie Irvine,
Eddie Irvine, sorry.
Huge careers.
David Coulthard's another one.
David Coulthard. And so you could say
Mark Webber.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You could say Mark Webber was in the same thing. Although I think he had more,
not exactly
more
as
ambition.
Comfortable. Yeah,
uncomfortable with Mr. Vettel.
But Rubens always said that he understood what his role was. He said my job, he said, is to be there. He said, and if Michael doesn't win, then I need to be in a position where I will win. But otherwise, he said, my job is to basically to work for the team, and the team have got have put their faith in Michael, and Michael's leading the championship, and I'm there to help Michael. So I think Sergio is probably now in the same thing, where he goes, well, I'm not as fast consistently as Max, and what they're looking for him and what they're getting from him a bit more this year is that, if they need him to be more consistent in finishing second, because at the moment it's Max and then a couple of others and then Sergio, like a few cars down, and they need him to get back up and get closer to Max. And perhaps now that all this is over, he'll be able to concentrate on that now.
I think 2 other teams are catching up to Red Bull.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways, I don't think it's got anything to do with any politics or anything, but I think in some ways the wheels are falling off a little bit. Red Bull, the wheels are falling off a little bit.
Well, everybody does catch up eventually. I mean, it's the pattern. You see, somebody gets out, they invent the new toy, they have all the great ideas, and slowly, bit by bit. I think Helmut Marko has come out just recently and said, the reason that everybody is catching up is they're copying us. It's like, well, that's that goes with the territory.
The name of the game.
Yeah, that's it. You have a look at what's working and going, oh, hang on, they're doing that and that's working. So our next car, we might do that as well. So that just makes sense. And let's catch up with a few friends first of all, who have joined us here this evening. We've got Box. G'day to Box. We've got Jeremy is joining us again from NZ. G'day, Dogfish. He's joining us again. Good to hear from you again. Paul Vandenacker is joining us again as well. Mad Cow Mark is with us again as well. Also, Jared is with us as well. He's saying RBVs could use him when they have the Ford deal coming up. Red Bull contract drivers for both teams, so need experienced drivers. I think you might be talking about sort of what Ricardo is going to do. It depends on what happens with Ford, because obviously, you would assume they'll lose Yuki when the Ford deal comes through, because although he's doing much better at the
Honda have said they want him when Aston Martin takes Honda entrance. Honda has said they want to work with Yuki.
So that's the. Also, the other big news in Formula One is Boxer saying Ocon is on his way out. Esteban Ocon after the get together at Monaco. He's
just like in the state of origin, it was for high contact.
Yes.
Is that high contact? Is that the getting in contact with God? Is it?
Well, I think the Red. I think the Red Bull
roll hoop.
Yeah, I think the Red Bull. Sort of gods, the Renault gods had a few words, because it's interesting. The head of Renault was quoted in the French media saying that for both Formula One and for the World Endurance Championship for Alpine, where he basically gave it wasn't even a thinly veiled threat. It was a definite threat, saying, we are not putting in these resources and all this money to basically just make up the numbers. We need to start seeing some results from both our Formula One and our World Endurance Championship teams. Otherwise, we will pull the plug. We're not, we need success, and we need it sooner rather than later. So they're not going to hang around if they don't start having a better performance. So the question is, of course, who takes over? Is it Jack Doohan?
Or is it Behrman?
We did speak about this last week, that it was like that the likely outcome might be Mick Schumacher in the short term, and then Jack Doohan in the long term. So I guess that all depends on how many races Ocon continues to race for the rest of the year.
And Behrman, amongst others, is rumoured to be going to Haas.
Yeah.
Now Ocon is one of the but Ocon is also being mentioned as a possible Haas driver. So to replace
K-Mag.
Hulkenberg or K-Mag, because he's out of. So there could be two drives going at Haas next year.
Of course, yes. Hulkenberg's leaving, isn't he?
Hulkenberg's out, and
I think Magnussen might be out. I'm only speculating.
Yeah, Magnussen is looking unlikely. He's not contracted for. There's a few. In fact, I had a list that I saw online. I realised it must have been done yesterday, because the name because the one of them is the one of the second one, of course, now is not out of contract in 25. But that's sort of the list of people that, of current Formula One drivers who at the moment don't have a definite seat for year 2025. So, you've got obviously Daniel is there as well. Yuki is apparently is not contracted. Magnussen, of course. Logan Sargent, you couldn't really see him hanging around. Gasly, I'm talking about Alpine. Pierre Gasly is apparently not. Is not contracted. Zhou Guanyu is being spoken about once again with Haas and also with Sauber, and of course Valtteri is out at Sauber and is looking for somewhere as well. So there's plenty of talent there, and that's not taking into account all of those those young drivers, all the Jack Doohans and Behrman and all. What's his name? Antonelli or
Antonelli?
Kimi.
So he's being sort of raved about. They're very keen to get him into into a car, and then probably even before the end of the year, if they can get him in, if they can push Sargent aside, they'd like to get him in.
And have we forgotten Liam Lawson yet?
Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it?
Red Bull have actually said apparently that they're going to make him wait, and he's said, "Well, I'll look for options elsewhere."
You would have to think so. I mean, in terms of, I mean, like he's done absolutely no good. I mean, like Dogs was, give him the top round, he'll be champion in less than 3 years. I don't. That's a big statement, but at the same time, he's done absolutely nothing wrong. I mean, he's ticked all the boxes, and I really am amazed that he didn't get the seat that Daniel's in, because he was even in the couple of races he had, he was as fast, if not faster, than Tsunoda already. And if you put him in now, you would assume that he would probably be faster again. So, yeah.
But how long can you sit on the sidelines without going stale?
Well, it's also I think there's something in his contract too, isn't it? Yes. If they don't get him a drive, a main series drive next year, I think he can become a free agent. And but whether it's with so much talent around, it's like unless they start getting rid of more of the old guys, but you'd have to think Lawson would be one of the top contenders.
Yeah,
Mm.
It's almost like we need another team to take up some of these extra drivers.
I've got 500 million sitting in the bank account, and I was just thinking, what could I do with it?
And one of the big three American companies.
And I've got a technical director that has just been hired that's sitting there twiddling his thumbs at the moment.
Yeah. Is he got a boat?
Mind you, if that kind of happened, you imagine that that at least one of the current IndyCar crop would get one of the seats.
I don't know whether they would actually, because they're sort of out, and the track record of people coming from IndyCar into Formula One is not good. So I would think that they would probably be looking at at getting people straight out of people with certainly at least one driver with plenty of current F1 experience.
Oh, absolutely.
And the second driver, I think they'd be very keen to get one of the young talents. I mean, I think that as much as they'd probably like, and the sponsors would like, an American driver, if who's credentialed. I mean, Sargent hasn't set they're not going to pick up Sargent, and apart from that, who have they got?
There are no real Americans showing any real talent at all. Sargent looked like he was, but he sort of put the handbrake on when he hopped into the big seat.
Yeah, well, that's as Jared is saying, Aston could take Yuki with the Honda deal coming up. Alonso will retire. Well, will Alonso retire? I think it'll be when they get to drag his dying fingers away from the steering wheel.
I wonder if.
Well, I was more thinking along the lines of, say, Herter or O'Ward or Palou, but.
Well, Herter's not setting the
not
world
anymore.
on fire
No, he has gone backwards just in the last year or so. Yeah.
Ward looked to have potential, but you'd have to think the longer that they're out of the mainstream of European racing, the more time they spend in IndyCar, the less likely it is. It's like Mark Webber said years ago in terms of possibly getting like a guest driver at Bathurst or something. He said the moment you come out of that that bubble of the Formula 3 or Formula 3000 as was then Formula 1 bubble, he said that's it. He said you're forgotten about. It's like, oh no, you do that now. It's like you're not serious. You're going off and doing that, because that's what he said. He had lots of offers before he was in Formula 1. He had lots of offers to go to IndyCar and to pick up other sports car stuff, and he just went. No, he said even his sports car stuff took a bit of recovery, because they went, that's that guy who flipped at Le Mans, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. But there's also another thing about IndyCars. I was just going to say that they play a different game. It's a much rougher game. You start taking some of the tactics they use on the American circuit over to Europe, and there'd be some angry faces.
Yeah, be interesting to see how they go. Clearly, they need to get some more. There needs to be some more opportunities to get some more young talent in, and that means sort of some of those older guys sort of hopefully moving aside. And as much as we like, like we love Daniel and Valtteri and those sort of Kevin Magnus and all of those sort of people, it's probably time to say, well, okay, that's it, guys. It's like it's time to move us. It's time to move aside and find other alternatives and get some of these talented. I mean, we've already seen. I mean, Teo Pacher, who was one of the drivers they were looking at for Alpine, being a French driver, he's now in IndyCar as well, and he's had an interesting weekend because the McLaren team, also IndyCars themselves and others, have had to put out statements. Basically, absolutely outraged because he's had multiple death threats after he came together with another driver on the streets of Detroit, and the Argentinian fans have got there, and apparently he's just been absolutely monstered on social media and got we'll track you down, we'll kill you, and da 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 da. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not going well, but he seems to be enjoying. He's already said that he said obviously I'd like to go back and do Formula One, but this is an alternative now, and increasingly the World Endurance Championship could be an alternative as well. I mean, we've got Mick Schumacher is already there and for Alpine, and you would imagine that if he continues to drive well, that he might be happy to stay there as long as he's getting good cash for it. But anyway,
20-6.
26. Oh no, we're early. I take it that's Queensland in front, is it?
Yes, it is.
Right,
I wouldn't be so we get a share otherwise.
Otherwise. So there you go. Now on the local front, has anybody catch up with Peter Adderton's appearance on Scott Pye's podcast, the Apex Hunters?
Oh, I read it, and I read the choice quotes, and I can't remember them now.
Yeah, no,
well, just it doesn't matter that you don't remember them, because we actually have some here, the ones that are interesting. Now, the interesting thing, I thought it was interesting because I mean we've invited him onto In Pit Lane. This is Peter Adderton online, and he sort of said yes originally, but then we never managed to get it to work. And I was always very hesitant in terms of because of his social media profile as to what he said, but he does say a lot of really interesting things, and I think one of the things that came out of the thing and the harsh reality for supercars is what he said in regard to both Scott Pye, who is the host. Normally he does the show with our mate Elliot Barber, but Elliot, of course, was racing at the Bend, so Will Brown was alongside of him. And they were both talking about the fact that they'd like to see more cars and more teams there, but Scott Pye was saying, I'm not sure, you get these sort of these Super 2 teams in, and they're going to be slow, and there's going to be more crashes, and it's going to I'm not sure it's going to work. But it's interesting that they said no, the teams obviously don't want it. Well, I think the interesting thing that Adderton pointed out was the real reason that they don't want more teams in is and
I mean the one thing I love about NASCAR is when you see 36 cars rolling around, it's pretty freaking cool. And there are going to be crashes, and there are going to be action and excitement just because of the odds of the track and the size amount of cars. 24 is not enough.
We need to race more to put on a show for our fans more. They've got to wait.
Do you know why you don't race more? Do you guys know why supercars
aren't they only paid to do 12 events, the teams?
They've got no money.
Yeah.
So this is the thing that blows my mind, right? Everyone's like, we need to do more races. It's like, yeah, but can't afford it, right? Because Supercars has to pay the teams and the teams have to get it. So I know they set up a committee right now. It's because the sport's not healthy. The thing is, it can't sustain more than 12 races today, right? The teams can't sustain it from a sponsorship perspective because the cars are too expensive, too expensive to operate, too expensive to repair. This is my point. You lower the costs across the board and you can run more races. TV's struggling, right? The ratings are struggling. I don't care what anybody says. You know, they get up there and they count these crowds, even at the Gold Coast, right? 200,000 people. It's the same crowd come 3 times, right?
Yeah,
It would be like, we did the soccer, right, on the weekend, right? And I'm sitting back going, they had the biggest crowd ever, right? I'm going to say 30,000 or 32,000, whatever it was. If they came twice, we would be claiming 60,000. It's the same people. So from a sponsor's perspective, we didn't get any more customers, right? We just got the same customer coming back twice. No one talks about the problem. The problem is that the sport financially can't sustain more than 12 races. It's not because we don't want them. It just can't sustain it. So how do you fix that problem?
So there's the question, you know, how do you fix that problem? Because what he says is right. I mean, they're talking about having, you know, like a couple more races, one at Queensland Raceway and one at Winton. But in both cases, they're admitting now that, you know, the teams are going to have to agree to pretty much do them like the local teams are going to be pretty much told you're going to have to do these for nothing because we're not going to get any more money out of it because the state governments in both cases are saying no, we're not kicking in any more money. You've got, you know, you've got the Gold Coast and Townsville in Queensland. You've got the Grand Prix in Melbourne. They have in the past. Well, they've also got Sandown. They've still got Sandown, and that does still receive some government backing as well. They did back Winton for a few years, and then they dropped that. And the moment they dropped it, that's why the race disappeared from Winton because there was no government money left in it anymore. But if they're going to only race at places where they get all this government money, they're going to have it's going to be the law of diminishing returns because the current economic situation, you're going to see more and more, you know, governments going, no, we're not putting money into that. And if they do put money into something, it's not going to be at a track like Winton or Queensland Raceway. It's going to be a street race somewhere.
And I question the wisdom of being a support race for a Grand Prix that's not in Australia because they're not very relevant aside from they're one of the top categories in Australia, so I can understand them being a support category in Melbourne, but I can't understand them being a support category in Qatar or Singapore.
Well, I think the only reason they're interested in doing it and why, you know, Barclay Netherfold is so keen to make it happen is because that's, you know, they need to find someone else who'll pay the money. That's why they're talking about, you know, having the second race in New Zealand, not next year, but probably in 26 and possibly at Highlands, which is a fabulous circuit. I mean, you know, it'll look brilliant on television. But they're really hoping that they'll get, you know, they'll be able to get some extra money out of the New Zealand governments and out of the tourism people over there.
Brand new government in New Zealand. I don't like the chances of getting any kind of funding out of the new Conservative coalition over there.
Yeah, perhaps Jeremy knows a bit more about it in terms they obviously put in some backing for Topor. So, but, you know, would they be willing to put in money if they do go to Highlands? I think the idea of doing it at Highlands is that they want, you know, they preferably want one on the South Island or one on the North Island and one on the South Island, because if they go up to Hampton Downs, I mean, it's, you know, it's still on the North Island. The logistics, I think, are the problem at the moment because they pointed out that, you know, it's not the easiest thing in the world apparently to get everything, you know, over there and to make it happen at Highlands. But it's a great track. I mean, if you've seen any footage from it, it's a sensational track.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And even with it being one of the top categories, supercars being one of the top categories in Australia, when they're on at the Grand Prix, I notice in my stand anyway, people scatter once on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. once the Formula Ones, on the Sunday, they don't come until right before the Formula Ones come on.
Yeah,
Or
we
the-
noticed that.
in that case, in nowadays case, the Formula 2s and Formula 3s, and on the previous days, they scatter when the supercars come on. They just scatter out of the grandstand.
You certainly noticed that on the television thing. I mean, you had a look at during practice and qualifying for the Formula Ones, the stands are absolutely packed, and it's like obviously they'll hang around for the supercars. Well, they didn't. As you say, probably at least 40, if not more percent of the crowd sort of disappeared straight afterwards. They were there for the they were there.
I don't.
Yeah, not sure why my message keeps disappearing. Not sure why that is. I know that we are having a problem. You're on YouTube, so yeah. I was going to say we are having a problem. Everybody's having a problem with Facebook. Doing stuff live on Facebook is a real hassle at the moment. Yes, Hampton, Topor, and then Highlands. It would make sense. I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Jeremy? I mean, if you started with Hampton Downs, would they get the same crowd? Would the same crowd sort of move on to Topor? I mean, you're going to pick up probably a lot of different people at Highlands on the South Island, because not everybody's going to come there. But as he said, Tony Quinn would obviously pump in several bucket loads of money to it.
By the same token, Tony Quinn has 4 circuits, and I would have thought that the 4th circuit would take priority over at least one of the other New Zealand circuits.
Yeah, I don't know, because he's very, very, he's been incredibly supportive. Like, certainly when we've spoken, he's been very much sort of saying that like my focus and my support is for New Zealand and all that. And he was almost reluctant. He said to get involved with Queensland, because he said he just didn't. He said all the politics of Australian motorsport, all the politics with dealing with. He just. Whereas in New Zealand, he said, everything was open. He said everybody was welcoming. It was like, he said you knew where you stood. He said there was no bullshit. You knew where you stood, and he was very happy about that. But so what Jerry said, so Aucklanders would go to Hampton because it's just it's down the road, and you'd also get the people from Wellington as well who'd go up there. Central would do Topor, and then the South Island would go to Highlands. So that sort of makes sense. I mean, it depends on how long. But once again, then you've got the problem that we're having at the moment, in that like how long are they going to be away from Australia? In terms of, because if they did they would have to do it like the old Tasman series. It would need to be sort of let's take the month of. Let's say May. Let's take the month of May off and say, okay, May is New Zealand month. We'll have a week to get there, and then we're going to do, we'll do Hampton, we'll do Topor, and then we'll do Highlands, and then we'll have another week, and then we'll come home and we'll do something back in Australia. But there was just
I'm not so sure.
Too long between rounds.
I think would be part of the problem as well, because you go to New Zealand in May, and it's kind of, you're recreating the problem of, say, doing Simmons Plains in May or June or July, in that or Winton, or because it's a lot colder over that time of year in New Zealand.
It'll be interesting this year with because Tasmania is going to be in June or July this year. That'll be interesting.
It'll be bloody freezing. It'll probably be wet. See, I mean, the Baskerville Historics were in September, and they've now moved to November, because they just said, we could never get a reasonable, weather out, even in September. The first one we did in September, it rained basically, for most of the 3 days. It wasn't freezing, but it was certainly cold. Whereas, of course, we went back last year in November, and the conditions was spectacularly good. It was a bit cool, but apart from that, and there was a little bit of rain, but I think like is saying would probably be fine. Jeremy saying probably be financially right because there's no street race, so less logistics, no Hamilton. That's the thing. It would be probably a better thing to do than there. But as saying, there's been enough break between races. It could have happened after Topor just push one race back. I just think the problem was all of the stinger went out of the break has taken all the sting out of that series in terms of mainstream media and even with the motorsport media. I mean, that's why we've seen. Yeah, I mean, we went sort of, we went weeks on the show on In Pit Lane. I mean, we went weeks without a single supercar story because there was absolutely zero to talk about.
Brody Kostecki's back in the championship now, and that should be a story of its own. Then it should have some momentum. And unfortunately, Brody's been nowhere near the results. He's that's taken the energy out of Brody's return to the series story. That stuck in the bottom half of the field,
and also you've got the problem. I mean, and Peter Adderton spoke about it in on the podcast, and so did Scott Pye for that matter. It's interesting that Scott Pye admitted. He said one of the things he said supercars need to take the gloves off and let us as drivers. Because obviously he was a full-time driver last year, and he's still part of it. He's still racing in the endurance. He said supercars need to let us off the leash and let us and actually talk to people without being terrified about what we're going to say. And that's one of the problems we've got when people come on the show. It's like I can't say much. Like I can all I can do is I've been given talking points from supercars, and I'm going to stick to them. And if you ask me, as one of them said, you're live. They can't control what you're going to ask me, and they can't control what I'm going to answer. So the deal is, sorry, can't come on.
Very much.
Jared saying if they ship cars with trailer, could do both islands. Yeah, I'm not sure how they were, but that's but Jeremy's saying definitely got there. As Paul's pointing out, while it's chilly in the winters, it's one of the lowest rainfall months. Yeah, May has been. May is pretty good. In fact, I mean, winter really. I mean, apart, yes, it does get cold, but that north of the dividing range thing, they do tend to miss out on a lot of the rain that sort of hits Melbourne. Because you'll often leave here on the. I'm sure, Richard, you've had the same thing where you'll leave here and it's absolutely pissing down in Melbourne, and then you get sort of the other side of Seymour, and suddenly things start fining up, and by the time you get up to Winton, it's like the days are cold but absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. You just roll your car out of the garage and everyone puts their hands up against the sun, and by 10 o'clock everyone's warm again.
Yeah, but anyway, that's the situation with supercars. But they'll be back in Darwin. Obviously, this weekend, Will Brown and Cam Waters both running in at Sonoma in the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Shane Van Gisbergen, of course, wins the Xfinity race last weekend. I didn't see it. I was out at Calder Park commentating at the time. I was sort of keeping up. I was waiting, via the social media. Richard, did you see it?
I did see it. He did not have an easy time. He had to fight for it from start to finish. He was down a fair bit at one stage. I think still in the top half, but he had an opening altercation with I can't remember the guy's name on the first corner. That didn't make him very popular, but look, he was the class of the field. There was no doubt about it. Yeah, you could see him preserve. He didn't seem to worry about the races broken up into three parts. He didn't really concentrate too heavily on parts 1 and 2, but you knew he was coming in part 3. He was just making sure he was up the front within striking distance. So he bought a ticket for the last last section. And yeah, they tried. I give the Americans, they put in a very valiant effort, but they weren't going to beat him. He was just way too good.
It'll be interesting to see how both Will and Cam go, because obviously, I mean, that's a major step up. But we saw what happened. I mean, the thing last year for Shane, I mean, it was the perfect storm because it was a street race, which none of them had done before. You know, none of the NASCAR drivers had done before. And they were just gobsmacked when they saw him go out. I forget who it was, but someone on one of the podcasts, one of the other drivers, said, you know, they had a look at, when he started to set such fast lap times, they had a look at his in-car camera. And he said, we just all looked at each other and went, oh, my God, how close is he going to that wall?
Well, actually, Shane had an off in the second part race, and you thought, and you could see them go, the commentators were, oh, well, that's his race over, thinking, yeah, it's a bit of an effort, but yeah, he wasn't going to be left behind. Come on, guys.
They did that in Chicago last year. You'd think they'd learn.
Yeah, I mean that was the thing. That's why, as I said to Sam on the American podcast, it was like we all got there and sort of looked at him, sort of, you know, like at 18 and then go to 17 and going, he's going to win this. The commentators weren't talking about him at all. Then suddenly, I think he got up as, you know, he suddenly broke into the top 10 and suddenly went, hey guys, this Van Gisbergen, this guy's coming. This guy's actually back in the top 10 again. He's doing. He could get a top 10 finish here. And it's like, yeah, you reckon?
He was coming like a steam train. It was like they'd all gone back to Hyundai Motors.
So it'll be interesting to see at Sonoma. I mean, Sonoma is a very, very different sort of track, and it'll be interesting to see. I would expect both Will and Cam to be competitive. I don't think they'll win, but if they did, as we were saying before, my God, I mean, it'll just open the floodgates, because, you know, every NASCAR team owner, you know, worth their salt is going to be, you know, over here for Bathurst and sort of, you know, saying, you know, hi, how are you? Have you ever thought of racing in NASCAR?
And I'll tell them yes.
By the way, thanks for the super chat from Jeremy. Thank you for that, mate. Appreciate that. There, and yes, go Shane Van Gisbergen. Yeah, his celebration, his race celebration at the end blew their minds as well, because, you know, he did the whole, you know, like, you know, lap the drifting around us, like, you know, oh my God, his car control is. And I was thinking, because I was out at Calder and I saw that because it came up on social media. And I said over the commentary there, all of that drifting at Calder, because you'd go out to the drifting like the club days, not the big events. You go out to the club days and you'd get, you know, so a couple of times I went out with the camera and all that, and I'd walk around and suddenly, you know, Shane would pop his head up and then he'd look at the camera and go, oh no. And you go, yeah, no, I'm not here for you. And he'd go, oh, good, thank you. But he would be there quite regularly. He loves his drift. As he said, you know, he just loves driving cars. He's having a ball over there. And the other thing they loved his celebration when he punted the rugby ball into the stands. That just blew their minds. I mean, you know, because he just got the rugby, signed it, perfectly executed punt into the. You know, actually not bad for a rugby guy there, but it was a pretty good kick. And he did well. So that really blew their minds as well. And they're saying, "Oh, is this going to be part of his tradition? Is this going to be sort of his equivalent of, you know, Castroneves climbing the wall? I mean, it'll have to be now. So I don't know who makes the rugby balls. I mean, Jeremy would know, or you might know, Mark. I think it's something like Steven or something, or yeah. Whoever makes the rugby balls, though, has got to send like a couple of boxes of suitably marked, you know, sort of all black souvenir rugby balls to Shane, so he can kick into the crowd whenever he wins, because he was that really blew them off. Blew them away.
He blew the tyres doing the burnout, and that was stunned. They almost lost for words there for a moment.
Yeah, that's it. And we've seen him obviously do that, lots of times before. As Jeremy pointed out too, it was a big weekend for the Kiwis in New Zealand. Scott Dixon won the IndyCar race. There's so as they say on Radio Le Mans, the answer is never Scott Dixon, because the answer always is Scott Dixon. And once again, he was the answer again. I mean, he shows no sign at all of slowing down or getting. He's very competitive, and he's very smart, and he timed it to perfection, and he's taken yet another win. I mean, he's doing a great job, and between sort of him, Will Power, and Scott McLaughlin, it's another sort of Antipodean sort of takeover over there. It's like, my God, these guys from the Southern Hemisphere, my God, they can drive a car.
Yeah, most of them are New Zealanders, though.
Well, yes, that is the thing, and there's no shortage of new ones coming through, as we've seen. Carrera Cup, we've got there the Michelin Sprint Cup Challenge, a couple of fast New Zealanders, running there. There's even a couple running around in some of the Excel races now as well. I think up in Queensland, you might have seen there was a couple. I think when the last time the Excels were on with the supercars, there may have been a young New Zealander or two in the field having a guest drive. So,
well, at least we can be thankful that Crowded House are Australian.
yes, and Farlap. And Pavlova's. So as you point out, one less pit stop, save fuel, use the fuel in the cool suit.
Yeah.
Don't mention the war. Don't mention Marcus Armstrong. We keep forgetting about with Marcus and Leo, and Nick Cassidy's another one, and Mitch Evans, and my God, they're all over the place. Apparently, the Sandpaper's Australian. There you go. So we've got that one. Go Sandpaper. Okay, guys. We'll just Doc's not here, so we'll pull out a bit early because I've got food waiting for me. Mark Marquez is it's official. He's going to the Ducati team next year, and Bastianini is going to KTM. So at the moment, Miller's ride for next year. He's a bit in the Daniel Ricciardo situation, although the team that Bastianini is leaving, they're saying that it might be just a straight swap, because apparently within KTM they are quite keen to keep Jack alongside. Jack's sort of taking it, and he's sort of saying, "Yeah, look, I want to stay. I'm not going to lose any sleep." As he said, I'm on JobKeeper at the moment. He said, I'm out there, filling out my resume, writing my resume, and sending in the applications, and we'll see what happens. But that if he doesn't get a MotoGP ride, he'll almost certainly walk straight into something. And I imagine it would be with a Ducati team somewhere, because Ducati have got a lot of time for Jack. They were actually very disappointed when he sort of ended up leaving. So he'll be okay. But that's sort of the news on the Moto GP front. Any other stuff, Richard?
Geordie Roddy.
We must say congratulations. Yeah, we mentioned that the Jordan, our mate, our former in-pit lane crew member, Jordan Roddy, raced the Sebastian Bourdais Lola on the streets of Long Beach earlier this year. Well, it was announced that car is coming back to Australia and will be doing laps at World's Time Attack at Sydney Motorsport Park in August. And hopefully we might see it at some other places. Hopefully, if they're really smart, they will get it back on the streets of the Gold Coast, because that is the car that won in the hands of Sebastian Bourdais on the Gold Coast. So it would be good to see it do some exhibition laps up there, even though the track's changed. It would be still good for them, for perhaps Geordie to have a bit of a run around there. But hopefully we'll see the car. It will do some laps on Saturday and Sunday. It's scheduled to do laps at Sydney Motorsport Park. and hopefully we can twist Geordie's arm somewhere along the way and get him to bring it down to Phillip Island. Although it's the problem is, and this is going to be the problem, next year for a lot of the historic stuffs at Phillip Island, is that it's the same weekend as Adelaide, and a lot of money and a lot of prestige is going to get a lot of those faster cars, a lot of those bigger cars to Adelaide rather than run at Phillip Island, which is a shame.
950 horsepower under the foot. That's he says it gets your attention.
I would imagine. I would imagine it would. Okay, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Now, next week on the program, it'll be. I can tell you it'll be a shorter show next week because at 9:45 p.m. next Wednesday, the first practice session for the Le Mans 24 hours. I go officially after tonight. I go on to basically go on to French time for the next week or so. And so the first practice session will be at 9:45 next week. If you're wondering how to see it in Australia, you've got a couple of options. You can get go direct to the ACO or to the World Endurance Championship and get the online streaming service. Costs about a bit under $30 Australian to get the race, so you can do it that way. The other thing is, but for basically the same amount of money, just over $30. I think one's $29 and one's $31. You can get Stan for a month. Of course, if you haven't had Stan before, you can get a free trial, and I'd be certainly doing that. But the good news is, I checked today, and Stan this year are going to do every single session. There's all the practice sessions, all qualifying, hyperpole, and of course the race itself. So if you're going to spend $30, I suppose you might as well spend it on Stan, because then for the rest of the month you can watch other stuff on Stan, including some IndyCar stuff and World Rally Championship and Formula E and all the other things. So anyway, yes. So looking forward to Canada on Monday morning at 4 a.m. ungodly hour of the race, but an hour of the day. So I might I'll be watching that on. I can watch it on delay because we're not doing the show at the moment. I don't have to worry about sort of getting up and starting to write news straight away. I can actually just get up and not look at anything and just turn on the race and watch it. So that's coming up this weekend. If you're interested in Le Mans at all, and of course you should be, the prelude, the test day is happening on Sunday. No video coverage at all from what we understand, but it will be covered in full on Radio Le Mans. So John Hindhoff, Shay Adam, Nick Damon, and all of the team from Radio Le Mans will be on duty at the Circuit de la Sarthe to do all of that for the week. They move into full Radio Le Mans mode for that week. So yeah, have a listen out on Sunday night, and you'll be able to get all of the updates from the first practice session, and then they'll cover all of the scrutineering. It's just such a great festival because they do the scrutineering in the heart of the town at the Place de Jacobin, in the heart of the city, and under the shadow of the big cathedral there. It's an absolutely amazing thing, and the whole town turns up. They have the parade there. They get over 150,000 just for the parade on the Friday night. It's an amazing place. Dolphin saying NASCAR online for free. NASCAR and Xfinity is online for free in New Zealand, so that's good. It's both of them are also, of course, on KO and Fox Sports here, but you've got to pay for them. And IndyCar and Supercars on Sky New Zealand. So IndyCar here is on Stan as well. Okay, so you can watch that. We'll see everybody next week. Mark, what is the score?
I think he's got a technical problem.
Yep, he's
You're
gone
on
on to
mute.
mute. We'll have to look it up ourselves.
Yeah. Yes.
if we're interested. Perhaps you could semaphore and yeah, give us,
Yes.
how far are they ahead?
No. Yes, 20.
Okay, so I think.
22.
Okay, I think it's 20 to 10. I think it's 20 to
Yeah.
10. There you
Yeah,
go.
go.
So it's 20 to 10 at the moment, which means
I think it's 5 to 10 here.
yes, and it's 5 to 10 here, and I want to have something to eat because I have a casserole in the pressure cooker that's waiting for me. So I'll see you.
Good night.
We'll see you next week for our preview of the Le Mans 24 Hour and all the latest updates as well. But until then, thanks for joining. Also, to let you know that some stuff from historic Winton will be coming. But I'm just taking a total break from editing and stuff like that at the moment. I need a little time off, but we will get back into it eventually. Okay, everybody, we'll see you very soon.
Good night,
Until then,
all.
thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll catch you
See
later.
ya.
Bye.